Welcome to SpanReads, not your typical rereads podcast, a 17-shard series where we reread the Cosmere and are giant nerds about it. Today, we will be talking about magic and Cosmere connections in Mistborn Secret History. Joining me is Mish.
Hi, also firstRainbowRose.
Jessie.
Hello, I'm Lady Lameness.
Rosemary.
I'm Kaymyth.
Kadie.
Hello, I'm Aon Ene.
And I'm Weiry. And also my name is Ian, which I don't think I did in the first episode.
You didn't.
Hosting is wonderful. This episode will have spoilers for the entire Cosmere, which the most recent release is Rhythm of War as of recording. So if stuff happens in Lost Metal, we don't know about it. Usually for the Cosmere, the magic episode, it comes to me. But I'm going to throw it out to all of you to summarize the magic in this story. I'm just going to sit back and watch.
There was magic, there was lots, and it was awesome. There you go. There's your summary.
Connection.
There was a lot of connection.
Yeah, a lot of connections, shenanigans. Yeah. Somehow the Weiry had some sort of orb of power that would connect them to, I don't know if it was keyed to preservation specifically or would just connect you to whatever you wanted, but there it was.
I feel like it was keyed specifically to preservation.
Probably.
Like, it seems way, way too overpowered to have an orb like that could just connect you to any shard. Like, I feel like you have to do a little bit more work to get what you want. So I think it needs to be keyed specifically to preservation.
Went around the Cosmere, gathering up every little bit of preservation investiture that they could find, and they stuck it into a ball.
We talked a little bit about this in the last episode, where this was the first time in-text stuff happened that we knew about from WOBs. Like, we knew Kelsier was around, and we had the term cognitive shadow from Word of Brandon. This is the first time it shows up in text. This is also the first time we got autonomy name dropped in text, because we had only gotten that in WOB a few months before the release of this book at the Shadows of Self release party.
I don't remember that at all.
I didn't know.
I'm pretty sure autonomy got name dropped. Let me just double check that.
I didn't know this was its first in-book appearance.
You want me to remember things from a release party?
Thought cognitive shadows had been discussed at least a little bit in Stormlight prior to this, because the Stormfather is one.
No, like not as a term that existed. Like, I believe it was like Brandon used the term in WOB to this kind of describe what was going on. But cognitive shadow as a term does not appear in Stormlight until Oathbringer, I think.
Okay. I'd say it's all blurred together for me. I didn't even start Stormlight until Oathbringer was about out anyway. So I may have read all of Stormlight after this.
I had a huge theory that the Stormfather was actually Tanavast's cognitive shadow, which is sort of true, but in a way I'm very unhappy with. That doesn't make sense.
Cognitive shadow merged.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Well, it's like when you take a soul and you take some investiture and you smoosh them together like Play-Doh.
So now that we have full Cosmere spoilers, I can talk about one singular line in a conversation. I believe it was the card tricks conversation. Ruin and Kelsier, they were talking. And Kelsier was like, or were you ever the type of man before you were a god to play card tricks? And Addie has this line where he says, no, I was too nice of a man to play card tricks. Or something like that. I didn't write down the exact quote. But it's just very nice to kind of see, I don't know how to describe this. It was interesting to see him say that when I hadn't really remembered that tiny hint of character was there. And I probably only would have noticed it as him remembering who he actually was like, because we have that Stormlight epigraph of him being, of Hoid being, Addie was a kind and generous man. That's really the only reason that I noticed it at all, and I don't think it would have stood out to me otherwise. But it's interesting to think that just the implications of that, I guess.
It makes me really look forward to Dragonsteel and potentially seeing who these people were before they picked up their shards.
Yeah.
The descriptions of Ahti in this book were very interesting. Because Kelsier almost always describes Ahti as a puppet for Ruin. It's the spider's legs under the skin. creepy description, but beautiful. Like, oh, very atmospheric. I was actually like reading this after reading Rhythm of War and reading Sazed's letter to Hoid in that book, because that's Sazed, by the way. If you haven't seen our like Rhythm of War like epigraph where he talks about race, is like, oh, like at this point, like he's probably more force than man. The problem is really the shard. That perspective makes so much sense after seeing Ruin and Ahti's dynamic here, because like that's very much what's happening with Ruin. It's like Ahti like is not in control, like he's riding the wave. Like Ruin, like the shard itself is what's the driving force here,
which tells you a lot about how the difference between how different people interface with their shards, whether they are fighting the intent or whether they embrace the intent, because that's the big difference between Ruin and Odium. Is Ahti was such a good man that he fought it as long as he could, whereas Ray's was just like, nah, I'm cool with this, let's go.
He was just very accepting of it.
And the more you embrace the intent of your shard, the more direct control you have over it, because you're not fighting that intent and it's not trying to subsume you.
It's a little bit like where when you're running down a hill, like you have to keep running. If you falter, like you're gonna trip and fall. Ahti tripped and fell a long time ago. And he's just rolling down like with the momentum. Race was running down, which is why like Sazed's like advice to like I don't think was good advice when dealing with Odium. Like it was not the same scenario happening, but it makes sense in character. That and I don't think I could have put that together without rereading Secret History like right now, basically.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where Hoid knows a lot more about the context than Sazed does, because Sazed just knows two shards and their prior vessels, and that's it.
Sazed does have first-hand experience that Hoid doesn't, though, and I wouldn't discount that either.
Oh, Khriss and Nazh, huh?
Yes. Like they're beautiful. This was also like the second appearance of Khriss ever, because like she has a brief cameo in Bands of Mourning, then we got this, and then White Sand graphic novel came out.
I didn't realize the White Sand came out after this.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure that it came out after, because
yeah, it did.
Something that I really like about like Nazh and Khriss's appearance in this is that it gives us a hint to the technologically advancedness of Taldane, in the fact that they've got guns, and Kelsey is like, what's this little like cylinder thing that she's holding and pointing at me?
And 300 years, you're about to find out.
Yeah, and it's like seeing like her like doing her thing, and it's like and it's so good, because like we'd had the prose version of White Sand, but like that was still like very under wraps. Like we didn't allow like open conversation of that on the forums at all. So like this was the first time where like Khriss was really able to be discussed, and like we were getting a feel of like what her character is and what like she ends up being.
We'd had some of Naz's sass, Stormlight
maps.
Yes, in the maps and stuff. So seeing Nazh and seeing him being sassy to Kelsier was so much fun.
Nazh is scientifically incapable of not being sassy to everyone around him. Yeah. It's just not biologically compatible for him to hold back the sass.
And I like that there was a kindness to Nazh as well that we hadn't seen up till this point, because like he goes back and gives Kelsier the knife, even though Kelsier is a cognitive shadow and doesn't really need a weapon to defend himself. He still does that with a knife that seems to hold significance to him.
But like Naz's reaction to Kelsier's existence is like, this isn't how it works. This isn't how any of this works. Like you need rites and rituals to become a shadow. And it's like, we don't know what those rites and rituals are, because doesn't appear to need any of that on Threnody, because he's also a Threnodite. He's very experienced with shades and cognitive shadows.
I mean, that's basically what connecting him to the well was, though, because those rites and rituals probably give them enough of a connection to stick around, and it's functionally the same thing.
Know, because like on Threnody, all it takes is death.
Oh, but The shades aren't, and shades are a type of cognitive shadow, but they're definitely not the type that they're not as self-aware as Kelsier is. There's something, as opposed to being connected, they're being blocked from moving on, or there's something that's blocking their ability to move on.
It's almost like the difference between a sapient and a sentient spren, whereas like one can exist but is more animal-like, whereas Scylla and that are people in their own right.
There's something, I would call them something similar to the difference between a Mistwraith and a Kandra, is that there is some sort of cognitive block in there that keeps them from being fully aware.
So now the question becomes, can you take a shade and make them a shadow?
To fix that block, I would say it's possible if you know what you're doing.
Back to Khriss. This is a point where it's been 5 years, so I don't quite remember. But I don't know if we knew as of release of this book that Khriss is the one that wrote the Ars Arcanum.
I think that we found out just before. I think we got a word of Brandon that Khriss was the writer.
Because that was a huge mystery for years. Like, we knew the Ars Arcana were in-world documents, and that they were all written by the same person. We just didn't know who, which is another reason why, like, Khriss getting on screen was so exciting at the time. It's like, hey, it's her, the Cosmere smart lady. I also need to mention the Weiry as the person on staff that likes Elantris.
I like Elantris.
Okay, the two of us that like Elantris.
I think I'm contractually obligated to like it.
I enjoyed Elantris. I've only read it once, but I'm willing to reread it for SpanReads.
No, but the Eyrians, going back to Elantris and seeing Elantrians, and it's fun to see Elantrians at the height of their power and kind of see them being that stuck up, because you hear about, as you read through Elantris, you're reading the fallen Elantrians who are forced to be humble people. Everybody's saying that they were so stuck up and they were so full of themselves. And you're like, no, I can't see this. So it's kind of interesting to be forced to see them as these full of themselves.
And we get to start seeing like some aspects of they're doing something with investiture, and like seeing the giant pipe that's going from presumably Cell to give them the investiture to like not only continue staying, maybe not staying as Elantrians, but like having their powers or something. They do something, but like whatever else they're doing in that fortress.
And like, I like how Brandon handled it, like that reveal, because like it doesn't make sense to go like in character like, oh, they're Elantrians. Like, Kelsier doesn't know what that means. Like, so it's like we get the EYREE like phonetic spelling of Weiry. The moment when I realized like, oh no, that's not Weiry, that's Weiry, the Aon. It's like, these are Elantrians. I was so excited in that moment. And it's also like the moment where it's like we see Aon Weiry like stylized in the form of the Steel alphabet. There's flashes of like Aeons. It's like, hey, like I know what that is, like because I read this other book. And like the book doesn't hold your hands. Like it doesn't tell you more than you need to know for this book, more than like Kelsier has the ability to figure out the beauty of Easter eggs.
I loved Kelsier climbing the wall to the fortress and he's getting the flashes of Cell and like that connection to Cell, and how he goes from finding it really strange, and like even though he recognizes that this is the type of world that like he has wanted for Mare since she died, he still finds it strange, to accepting it. But I always forget that he has those flashes with the connection, and like I really like them.
Do we know how any of that worked? How Kelsier was just getting that connection and being connected to the fortress or something?
He was stuffing his hands inside the investiture, but yeah.
No, I mean, I know how he climbed it, but I mean how the connection was working, that he like understood. He started understanding their language and all of these things. And Aonic. So
like holding objects like does give you an impression of like that object in the physical realm. And I think here, like, because it was being the whole like fortress is being infused with investiture from the pipeline. I think it was just like kind of a side effect of like touching that investiture was naturally forming a connection, and he was getting a bleed through effect.
Do we think that it would be the same or like better or worse if he was like a fully human instead of a cognitive shadow? Do we think that cognitive shadowness has changed how he influenced with it? Interfaced with the connection?
I would say yes. Like I think being entirely suffused of investiture, he's gonna be more susceptible to that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like a living like human, like there's protections in place. Like you can't really like, they're not as vulnerable in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that being a cognitive shadow, I don't think that he would have been able to accept the bleed in if he hadn't been.
I mean, he had very mixed feelings about it too. He was even just torn on how weird it felt for that to look normal. Like he was aware there was a part of his mind that was starting to try and accept that as how things should look, and it bothered him.
There's a description of like his clothes are like a part of him. Like they're not separate. Like this is his soul. Like his soul has clothes that are part of the soul. He doesn't just show up naked. Though like he also kind of is naked because all of that's just him.
He's like the honest brand because they're like that as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like that's kind of like the thing that tweaked in my head is like, oh yeah, having not read this since before Oathbringer came out, and then like seeing like more cognitive realm in that book, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, like there are fundamental rules to the Cosmere. Who'da thunk?
Going off of that, like one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the cognitive realm itself and like the differences between Rasharan subastral and the Scadrial subastral. And something that I find really, really cool with the Scadrian one is that everything is made of mist, but the actual physical objects fully get made in the subastral, whereas on Roshar, they're all just beads, right? And the only things that are fully made there are things that exist within the cognitive realm. But we've learned so much more about the Rasharan cognitive realm now that we can kind of apply it in a similar way to the other ones, because we can assume that they work, as you said, fundamentally in the same way. I can imagine, like, because I came in at the time of Oathbringer, so I got all the Shadesmar stuff then, but I can imagine before that only having the bits and pieces from the first couple of Stormlight books to try and like piece together how this alien-like realm worked would have been like really difficult.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And like the different dynamic of what like land is sea and sea is land. We see like on Roshar, it's like the sea of beads, very distinctive. Whereas like on Scadrial, it is a sea of mist. It's like a normal like human person like can't walk on the ground there. Hoid needs like a raft of a.
He needs a boat.
I'm pretty sure it's a cognitive shadow, like, and just rows around on that.
It's interesting that it's all made of mist. Like mist is so integral to Scadrial. But like the actual mists are preservation, right? They're only one half of the actual shard that is on the planet, even though we see Ruin's black mist and then it never comes up again. But mist is just so integral to the planet that like that makes up the cognitive realm as well. And that is really cool.
Yeah, I think that gets into like perspective in the Cosmere and like thought in the Cosmere. Like, because like I'm sure like for like Cosmere aware people, it's like Scadrial, oh, that's the planet with all the mist. Like it's like so like tied up into like Scadrial's identity at this point that like it makes so much sense that that gets expressed in its cognitive subastral.
Because that's what people are always thinking about.
I mean, even us, when we think about Mistborn, we think about the mist. I mean, the mist and the ash, depending on which era you're talking about. It's interesting that the ash doesn't come through into the Scadrian world because, you know, it's just as integral to the sky, if not more so, because they avoid the mists because the mists have scary things, but the ash would be almost more part of what they would imagine the world being, because they interact with it day to day, and it makes up a major part of their life. So I wonder if the fact that the mists are invested is the reason why they show up versus the ash.
But also, like, the mists have been around longer. Because, like, the ash only started after, like, the Lord Ruler's ascension. Like, the mist has always been part of the world.
True.
We don't really know how long Scadrian history took place before. It's been very unclear, like, how many people took up the power at the Well of Ascension before Rashek. Brandon hasn't answered that question. I want an answer to that question, please.
The other cognitive realm Shadesmary question that I think is really interesting, that this is probably more like post-Cassandra thing going forward into the future. But if I'm remembering correctly, there is a wub that says that there are spren that have reached Scadrial. And Roshar has a thriving spren community that lives in the cognitive realm, just like humans live in the physical realm. And it makes me wonder, like, how much the Scadrian subastral has changed over time to accommodate people living in it, probably in the space that is between the north and the south, presumably.
One other, like, thing is, like, Hoid has the line about, like, Kelsier's destruction of the pits, like, disrupted an entire mercantile
ecosystem.
Enterprise. Like,
yeah,
like the pits were ruins, perpendicularity, and were the safer one. Because, like, even though it's of ruin's actually trapped in the other one. Like, we never really got to see, like, the cognitive side of the pits of Hathsin. Like, I would have liked to see that. Because, like, there were people around in the cognitive realm of Scadrial, but, like, we see Khriss and Nazh, but we don't really see any others. Probably because by the point Kelsier can walk around, it's like, most are probably like, the entrance got destroyed. It's like, bad stuff is happening on this planet. We're gonna leave.
It's time to say bye-bye and go somewhere better.
So until there isn't a voracious force of ruin hanging out in the sky of the cognitive realm.
They also might have been in other points of the world as well, because a lot of that area would have been like the Misty Sea and wouldn't have been somewhere habitable for people to actually be. I want to see the cognitive realm again now. I want to see, like, Era 2 cognitive realm.
Yeah.
It's like Nalthis. It's like, I want to see Nalthis' cognitive realm. What is it like?
I want to see all of the Cosmere. Just give it all to us, Brandon.
Brandon, please.
All of it at once.
Scadrial, like, it makes sense. Like, yeah, everything's made of mist. The other planets, just like, what's the distinctive thing on this world that Brandon's going to use for the cognitive realm that's not lame?
Well, and the cognitive realm, I've always pictured as not being as colorful for some reason. I've always pictured it being kind of muted. So, like, Nalthis' logical thing would be color. So is it just that all the colors are muted, or is it that colors are super bright? Or that'd be so cool. You go to the cognitive realm.
You cannot go into the cognitive realm on Nalthis without a really good pair of sunglasses.
That would be
really
so
painful.
awesome. Everything goes neon.
I'm just imagining everyone in that cognitive realm wearing sunglasses, just walking around with them.
That actually reminds me, Mish, there is a scene in Oathbringer when they're going to Thaylen City and they're walking across the Longbrow Strait, and it is covered in this colorful forest. And I've always wanted to see art of it because, like, in my brain, the cognitive realm is also, like, not super colorful, but then, like, there's scenes like that I'm like, wow, no, there is a lot of color here.
Yeah,
it's just very different in its setup, like with the way that the trees are formed and things like that. But it, like, there was some really colorful plants that were described, so I've always wanted to see art of that.
Well, I think it's a natural consequence of, like, the sky is always described as black. It's like when you find ground, like,
It's black.
It's like crystalline
Obsidian.
black.
Yep. The beads are black from memory as well.
Mm-hmm.
Black, lots of black.
Or if we're in Scadrial, it's gray because it's the mists, and the mists are gray or white, or...
Definitely makes sense.
That would make like the colors of plant life stand out even more.
Yeah.
And there was plant life, like on the obsidian ground, which like tracks with what's in Rashar as well, and where we find plant life there.
And actually one of the weird things like I saw on here is that in Scadrial, like any water grows plants, like even like cups.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Like that's cool.
So interesting.
But also like there are he also mentions like stranger plants in deserted areas far from people, but still on like land in the physical. So it's like growing out of the mist itself. Cognitive realm botany. I'm like, we need an expert in the Cosmere, like to just like spout lore at us, because like
Almost
we don't
like-
know how this works. Like
It's almost
we
like
wanna
the
know.
cognitive realm is remembering what Scadrial used to be like before the ash falls.
I don't think that's it, because it's like it's not like made of mist. Like it's like they're described in like the same like as other cognitive realm plants.
Are they described as crystalline?
I think there are some structures that are described like that, but we don't know if those are plants or not, I think.
Okay.
Or there,
it's like
at some point, there is one that...
the ones like all the Scadrian plants are described similarly, whether or not like they're on like the Shadesmar cognitive realm land or like in the mists. I don't know if they're described similarly to like Rosharan cognitive realm plants.
That's just one of the things that I would have assumed would be the same in different places, that the plants would be formed out of the same substances. But yeah, it just occurred to me that I don't remember them being described as crystalline. And like that's the type of thing that Kelsier would comment on. If you saw a plant made of crystals, you're not gonna leave out the fact that it's made of crystals.
But like that in turn makes sense that like the plants would be different, because like the plants on Scadrial and Roshar are different. Like
that is true.
I do want to call out the scene where like preservation's like strings are just covering Fadrek City. Because like earlier like in the book, like Kelsier describes fuzz as unraveling, like fuzzing away. It's like, oh yeah, like he's unraveling like into like this like network of connection and investiture. And like this is what like you stretch out like a human body and you get a blanket, apparently.
Cuddly preservation blanket.
There's also a scene somewhere in here, and this might be just one of those things where we mention it and it's like, cool, we have no idea what this is, but Kelsier finds the Drifter again. He finds Hoid when Vin was going to talk to him, and he was the reason that Vin left. But when he finds him, he touches Hoid's soul and gets this like shock of pain and like numbness and backs off. And that's interesting to me. That's weird soul stuff is going on with Hoid, I guess.
And it could be an artifact of soul of Hoid having once held a Dawn Shard. There's still a lot of lingering investiture nonsense there. It's like sticking your finger in a light socket. It may not have the lights on, but it's still going to zap you.
I could also see that like as an active like Hoid has protections on himself because like he knows a lot. Like he's like, I don't want like random people in the cognitive realm messing with me. Like no, like there's personal force field. Thank you. Like
no touchy,
no touch.
My soul.
Which makes what Odium does even more interesting if he is supposed to have protections in place like that zaps cognitive shadows, you know. The fact that Odium is able to mess with it, and mess with him, and mess with his memories like that, or
not technically causing harm.
Not technically what?
Causing harm.
True. Very true.
That's why he was able to do that. Like, it's like, I'm not technically hurting you, so I can do this, which is terrifying.
Oh, that's so insidious.
Speaking of insidious, I want to talk about that final spook and Kelsier scene, because it felt a lot like making a deal with the devil. I'm like, I don't like this.
I'm pretty sure Spook felt the same way. Of just, he's like, hey, it's my friend. What am I?
Do I really want to do this? All right, let's see what happens. Kelsier!
But the whole scene, I was like, Kelsier, hey, I'm gonna help you live forever. The only cost is you helping me get a new body so I can return. That sounds like D&D, making a deal, selling your soul. We're gonna build a door so you can just go to the prime material plane whenever you want. Sure, that's a great idea.
And assuming that Spook did eventually die, clearly something went on that he either didn't get the immortality or he stopped helping Kelsier. That's assuming he died, which I assume he did because he stepped down from ruling at the very least.
Or he's just these people need to learn how to rule themselves. I'm gonna go over here now, and
he did a George Washington.
Somewhere else.
Has anybody asked Brandon if Spook died?
I think it's been Rafford.
It's been, because there is also a theory that Kelsier's body is Spook's body. We don't know what's going on with any of this.
Yeah,
but also apparently Spook was king, because he's referred to as Your Majesty, and Breeze is telling him. But the Basin does not have kings anymore.
Well, and he's
Secret History 2, please.
To as the Lord Mistborn, but not it. Even in their histories, he's the Lord Mistborn, not the first king.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder if he was slowly trying to implement Elend's democracy ideas over the course of his rule, so that he could slowly cede little bits of power away, kind of like how England developed from a monarchy into a constitutional monarchy with a parliament where the monarch doesn't really do much that isn't ceremonial. So, it's just sort of it's going to take people some time to learn how to govern themselves, and So he took that leadership role for a while, and then just slowly started bleeding off power
and having a lot of kids, apparently.
Yeah. He was having a good time on the side.
I mean, got to rebuild the world. Not much else to do in the downtime.
I found it interesting that when Rashek died, rather than kind of respawning in the cognitive realm in the place where he died, like everyone else, I guess it was his connection to the well. He turns up right there when he dies.
Yeah.
And I don't think he died very far away. I think wherever it was directly above anyway, so it wasn't that far for him to pop.
Yeah, but I don't think it was far away, but I did get the impression that he popped up right there, specifically at the well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember getting that impression. I feel like he walked in. I
think he came through the ceiling. I think he floated down.
Why would he walk down?
Why would he move?
He doesn't like Kelsier or preservation. He doesn't care about them. He specifically is like, I don't like you guys, and I'm not going to stick around to talk to you. It's why would he go down?
No, it's true. I think that he does end up popping into existence at the well.
Okay, so Fuzz looked up abruptly. He winced, turning his eyes towards the ceiling as if it were going to collapse on them. He opened his mouth, jaw working, but made no sound. What? He finally said. What have you done? Kelsier stood up. What have you done? Fuzz screamed. Kelsier smiled. Hope, he said softly. I have hopes. He was perfect, Fuzz said. He was the only one of you that... He spun suddenly, gazing down the shadowy room beyond Kelsier's prison. Someone stood at the other end, a tall, commanding figure not made of light, familiar clothing of both white and black contrasting with itself. Kelsier strode up to the room of stone around the pool and waited as the Lord Ruler strode towards the light of the well. He stopped in place when he noticed Kelsier.
So he does walk towards the pool.
Yeah.
Cool.
He walks towards it, but he kind of just appears there. I don't know. It does say there's shadows. So he might have walked in, but I also can't think of why he would bother.
Yeah.
Like, I could see him, like, wanting to make a pilgrimage to the well one last time. Like, that seems, like, vaguely, like, just, I don't know. Or, like, he might have gone there to, like, yell at Ruin a bit before moving on. And then, like, Kelsier was there and is like, I'm not going to show an undignified version of myself. I'm just going to disappear.
Maybe he was trying to preserve himself, just like Kelsier does, and finding out that Kelsier's there, he's like, nope, not worth it. Never mind.
No, not sticking around with this asshole. Oh, probably gonna have to bleep that.
Sticking around with an impotent mouse and a half-blooded rat, as he says.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, even after, like, seeing Kelsier, like, he does go up and, like, stick his hand into the light. But, like, he has no intention of staying. So it's like something about that I think was important to Rashek for personal reasons.
Something that I completely forgot about until this book is that when the Koloss are killed, it's a human that appears in the cognitive realm, and they presumably appear without hemorrhagic spikes, which makes me wonder what would happen if you killed a Kandra or you killed an Inquisitor and they turned up in the cognitive realm. Would they also turn up in a form without spikes? Like, would the Kandra turn up as a Mistwraith in the cognitive realm?
I think the Inquisitor would probably show up as their human form.
Yeah.
But
Kandra, tricky. We don't know. If they do show up as human, I'm sure they'd be shocked as everyone else.
Well, I don't think they'd show up as human.
Yeah,
I think they would, like, show up in Kandra form. They just don't need spikes anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
Because, like, it doesn't make sense for them, like, to become Mistwraiths in fact. That just kind of sucky, to be honest. Like,
yeah, that would suck.
Because it is, like, this isn't, like, Kelsier's actual body. Like, it's a form of investiture that's taking the form of his body based off of his self-perception. So it's like the Kandra self-perception is going to, like, define what they look like.
That's a good point.
Yeah, whereas for the Kandra, the spikes are fixing a cognitive block, whereas for the Koloss, the spikes are interfering with their cognition, and so they revert to their best cognitive form, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting to see an Inquisitor or somebody with hemalurgy, like, because I'm thinking specifically of an Inquisitor who has been spiked multiple times, seeing their cognitive shadow. Are they going to have holes where the other spirits used to be? Are there going to be, can you actually see the spirits that have been stapled to their...
I don't think so. And it's like their whole spirit is there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to have holes. And it's like, to be honest, like, I could also, like, see, like, Inquisitors showing up as Inquisitors, like, with, like they won't be, like, real metal spikes, but, like, it would be part of their cognitive form because they are
if they perceive themselves
aware of themselves.
That's true.
Like, time enough for, like, those spikes to become part of their self-perception.
That's true.
It does make me wonder if different people might have a different, like, for some of them they would perceive themselves as Inquisitors, and some of them would just go back to not being that. or to not having the spikes, even the fake spikes.
Might depend on how long they were an Inquisitor and how willing they were in the conversion.
Yeah.
So it's probably a matter of identity at that point.
So Era 2 Kolos have been changed where they are more cognitively aware. So if a Kolos dies in Era 2, does their cognitive shadow show up as their Kolos self, or do they revert back to human?
Well, because Kolos don't need to be spiked to become Kolos.
No, they do.
To be Kolos,
they do. Yes.
Ah.
When Kolos have children, those are Kolos-blooded humans. You still have to have the spikes in order to become a full Kolos. But they're much more intelligent and have more cognitive control of themselves in Era 2. They are a functioning society rather than just kill everything in sight. So they're much more sapient than they were. So that brings the question of, when an Era 2 Kolos dies, does their cognitive shadow show up as Kolos or human? Or is it somewhere in between? Does it vary depending on how old they were when they died?
I'd presume like it's the same, like with potentially Inquisitors, where like it's a matter of self-perception. It's like, what do they view as themselves?
Interesting questions.
One thing I do want to point out is that in this book, we see dead people appearing in the cognitive realm. We don't observe that happening in any of the instances where we're in the cognitive realm in Stormlight.
So I have a theory about this. My theory is it's because Kelsier is a cognitive shadow himself that he can see other cognitive shadows, whereas if like someone like Khriss probably wouldn't be able to see cognitive shadows that have just arrived after dying.
Something about the way Kelsier connected to the well made him more substantial.
Yeah.
He was seeing them even before he was connected to the well. He was seeing other guys.
But he was already a cognitive shadow himself.
Well, I think the well
Whereas
is
Khriss
why
is not.
Khriss can see.
Yeah.
I think that's
Kelsier.
why she can see him, yeah.
But anyway, that's my theory.
Brandon has like remarked on this, like, oh, it's like the people are in different situations. So it's like him being dead makes sense. But like Laros like showing up to everybody who dies, and then like we know Harmony takes up that mantle. It's like he considers it his most sacred duty, and it's like seeing that little through line is just like, I like this.
Writing that part of the Shadesmar article was fun to think of wording that wasn't like too speculative as to like why this is like this. So yeah, that was fun. It got me thinking about it quite a lot.
Yeah, because it's weird because like the cognitive realm is kind of part of the afterlife for the Cosmere. It's the near afterlife, but you can also go there physically.
Yeah,
like
it's a transition zone.
There's a book series that I was reading that was it's kind of like a fairy tale in a way, but it was split into like the beginning, the middle, the near end, and then the true end. And it just makes me think that the cognitive realm is the near end and the beyond is the true end, which is not at all how the book was set up to use those terms, but oh well.
We understand what you're going for.
Thank you for watching. You can find us at 17thshard.com for all the news, discussion, theories, and fun you could ever want. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. You can leave us a review on iTunes. You can subscribe on YouTube. And you can also support us on Patreon. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.